She called me a leech over a plate of eggs I'd cooked and a rent check I was short on by
You are a
$63.
leech.
"You feed off other people's momentum," she said, as if momentum were a bank account and I'd been skimming interest off her strides. She had that look people get when they're already rehearsing the next life. Eyebrows higher, patience lower, eyes searching for an exit sign only they can read. 2 days later, she posted a photo from a rooftop that wasn't ours, holding a glass of something that wanted to be champagne. The caption said, "Chasing growth." In the background, there he was. A banker's smile and a lapel pin the size of a decision. A CEO of a bank that bought other banks and renamed the lobby. The comments called them power with fire emojis. I turned my phone face down and watched a fruit fly try to escape the glass. The last thing I said to her was nothing. I locked our door quietly and printed a copy of our lease because paper used to calm me. The next morning, I took the early shift at Murray's Diner, where the grills sizzled louder than mistakes and coffee could pass for absolution if you didn't look it in the eye. Murray was a Vietnam vet who believed in tips and silence. He said, "I ran eggs like a nurse runs a trauma bay, decisive, fast, clean." People who say leech are usually borrowing blood. Murray said it was the closest thing to a hug he'd ever offered. I slept on a friend's couch that smelled like the ghost of pizza. My share of the apartment became her candles and his evidence. Once, because I'm human, I scrolled a little too far and saw a photo of them with a caption, "When you know, you know." I knew where the breaker box was in that building. I knew how to make her laugh when the smoke alarm forgot it wasn't a metronome. I knew my hands weren't going to be enough anymore. Bad week turned into bad month. The landlord sent a notice that looked a lot like, "We're done here." And a credit card bill added service charges like seasoning. I applied for a warehouse job, a night desk, a security guard post, and got turned down for all three. When you're tired, no feels heavier. One rainy Tuesday, I rode the Q train into a morning that smelled like tin. I stared at an ad for agile finance, which is not a phrase anyone should have to understand before coffee. A man in a suit slept so perfectly upright that he looked like a statue of hope. I got off at Canal and walked past a bank branch with a sign in the window. "System update tonight. Closed early." Someone had penned under it, "Good luck." The marker bled into the paper like the city had opinions. That night, the power burped across a chunk of Midtown. My phone lit with the kind of call that makes the stomach answer first. It wasn't her. It was a friend of a friend who managed a high-rise. "We're dark, elevator stuck, fire department en route. You still know those panels?" I did. I knew because years ago her building had a night where the stairwells forgot what lights were, and I'd learned. I took an Uber I couldn't afford, rattling down avenues that looked like hollow bones. And when I stepped into that lobby, I wasn't a leech or a joke or a man with a credit limit anymore. I was a person who knew where the shutoff valve lived. The doorman who'd once watched us bring home a lamp in a fight handed me the override key with both hands, like it meant something. It did. We didn't save anybody. The fire crew did that. We just didn't make it worse. That can be a kind of miracle when everything else is breaking. When the power came back, the elevators sighed themselves open, disgorged a few men who wanted to look competent and a woman who didn't. I rode down alone and felt taller than gravity. Somewhere, online, a photo of me with that key made a small circle of rounds. It wasn't viral, it was village. People started emailing me the way you email a plunger. "You seem to know stuff. Do you consult?" I did not. But a week later, I Googled how to make an invoice and charged $200 to make sure a building's emergency lights actually turned on when the generator felt shy. I wrote receipts and valves on the top because every business needs a name, and mine was there all along. I didn't see her again that year. I saw her life, though, through the glass of the internet. Charity galas, ribbon cuttings, a panel with a background that said, "Leadership Next," in a font that meant you owned a policy. When I caught a glimpse of the banker, he looked like someone who had never eaten breakfast standing up. At 3 in the morning, when the city is honest, I would sometimes whisper to the ceiling, "Am I a leech?" The ceiling never answered, but the jobs did. Small ones, then larger ones. I upgraded from plunger to manual. I started writing short, clear documents that said, "No green, no go." If the light's not green, the elevator doesn't move, the vault stays closed, the doors don't unlock. People liked rules when the dark arrived. I learned how the banking world does darkness, with generators, with backup rooms, with chain of command. You can hear the money hum if you know where to stand. I learned acronyms like they were new cousins, and I started sleeping better. Because knowledge is a kind of mattress you build with your hands. 5 years passed very slowly, and then all at once. Then the phone rang in a voice I recognized without wanting to. It was her voice, trying not to be her voice. We're dealing with an incident," she said, like she'd bitten the word before it left. I suggested they call you. "Who's they?" I asked, though I could have drawn a seating chart with crayons and gotten close. "The bank," she said. The name dropped between us like something breakable. I said nothing for 3 beats. The way Murray taught me when a customer insulted their own order and wanted you to fix it magically. She filled the silence with status. Power out in a data center. Backup not backing up. There's a storm. There are people in a branch tower elevator. We have PR. We don't have the other thing. "The manual," I said. "The manual," she echoed, like she'd never said the word out loud. I should have said no. "You want me there now?" "To prove what? That you were wrong about me? That I can speak fluent adrenaline?" It felt like standing outside a house you used to live in, holding a key you never returned, wondering if the locks changed, or you did. I said yes. The operations war room was glass and air conditioning. The kind of place that assumes machines will keep secrets because you asked nicely. The banker was there in a shirt that probably cost more than all my invoices from year 1. Sleeves rolled to suggest effort, not sweat. There were senior people with titles that could have been carved, a lawyer making notes as if a transcript could push a button, and her, eyes that smiled at cameras, not at me. "Thanks for coming," said someone who had been told to say it. "Where are your greens?" I said. They blinked. I tapped the wall of monitors. "What's green? What's red? When does red become hold, and who has authority to override?" A woman with a pixie cut and an exhausted spine slid a tablet toward me. "We're calling these orange," she said. "We thought it'd be less alarming." "Orange is a fruit," I said. "Green is go, red is stop. We don't speak in vitamins." The CEO smiled with a mouth that didn't need rehearsals. "We're in good hands," he said to the room, which is what people say when they want you to relax while they keep control. He tried to shake mine. I looked at his hand, and then at the elevator camera feed, in gray and grain, and a young guard talking through the crack of a door to a kid who might not breathe right when it's dark. "Here's how this works," I said. "We have an inside crisis and an outside crisis. The outside one will point cameras and ask questions with nouns. We will answer with verbs. The inside crisis can kill people if we guess wrong. We do not guess." They stared. Her eyes did something I couldn't name. "Who's in charge?" the lawyer asked, because lawyers need nouns. Incident commander is in charge, I said. They looked around for a commander like you, look around for a waiter. You invited me? I added. If you want me to run this, pick me. If not, say so and I'll sit and drink your coffee and watch the news. I wasn't cocky. I was tired of rooms that wanted your skill, but not your terms. The CEO glanced at his general counsel with eyebrows that meant, "Is that okay?" And the general counsel did a little lawyer nod that meant, "We'll blame him if it fails." "You're the incident commander," the CEO declared. "Tell us what to do." "Great," I said, "because you should always affirm the verbs. First order. No one touches messaging, social, or press without a green light from life safety. If someone's stuck in an elevator and one of your names on a building registry, we do that first. Second, identify shutoff valves, override keys, generator loads. I want pictures, not assurances. Third, branch closures cascade from power, not PR. I pointed to Pixie Cut. Your life safety. She exhaled like someone had unclipped a weight. Find the stuck car. Keep talking to them. Keep them away from the doors. Someone who knows gear goes to the mechanical room with FD. No one improvises without a union hand. I pointed to the lawyer. You write nothing that suggests blame. You write everything that suggests action. If you need a sentence, write this. We're working the plan. Life safety first. We'll update on the half hour. I pointed to the CEO. You sit down. He sat. It was a beautiful chair. I did not recognize the fabric. I recognized respect. Her face did what faces do when you watch someone you left behind start driving the bus you're on. There's pride you didn't mean to have, and fear you didn't ask for. What do you want from me? She asked. Nothing, I said, and meant it in the kindest way. If you want a job, get me names of every building engineer by floor. First names, cell numbers, no last names. This is a verbs operation. Her hands moved before her eyes caught up. She was always good at lists, at getting things out of other people's throats without making it feel like pulling. She left with purpose, and for a second I remembered what beginnings can do to a room. We got to work. I like work. Work forgives the rest sometimes. We found the stuck car, the kid, the mother, the stale air. FDNY moved like a song you know before you hear it. I handed them the override key, a cousin of the one I used to carry through nights that smelled like burnt toast and laundry soap, and stepped back. The doors parted like they had manners. The kid cried the cry you want to hear after a scare. A building engineer in a shirt that had never seen the internet shook my hand. I've seen you online, he said. You do that receipts thing. Receipts and valves, I said. 2 wrists, same body. The outside crisis woke up too. A reporter called me by name and asked for nouns. No names, I said. No blame. We're moving verbs. He didn't love it. He used my lines anyway. At minute 40, the comms team put up a post that said too much and not enough, and I said, take it down and replace it with what we agreed. The CEO said, our brand. And I said, your brand can live without a post. That kid can't live without air. He didn't like that. He liked it later. Incidents are marathons disguised as sprints. People burn their brightest in the first hour and then get weird. The coffee turns into a clock that lies. Somewhere between 1 a.m. and 2, the generator load that was supposed to support the data center lied too. And the backup to the backup, which existed mostly on a whiteboard and a brand promise, shrugged. A man with cufflinks tried to explain to me how uptime is a culture. I asked him where the shutoff was. I have a rule. If you don't know where the valve is, you don't get to use the word culture. We moved the critical forward, paused the cosmetic, held the press with life safety first, and nobody died. That should be the baseline, and felt like a miracle. At 3 in the morning, a power company liaison leaned into the glass and said, 30 more minutes. He'd said it an hour ago. I told him we needed his real number, not his hope. He looked ashamed and found a number with math in it. She came back with engineers' names and something else on her face. Resolve, or resignation, or the way people look when the costume doesn't fit anymore. She rested a hand on the back of a chair near mine and didn't sit. He wants to go live, she said, just loud enough for me to hear. He can go live when life safety says we're green, I said. Make that sentence your ringtone. You always did like sentences, she said, and then looked away. Because memory is a traitor. At 3:18, we had our greens. The kid was home or in an ER, and either way breathing without help. The elevators ran like they remembered how. The data center ran via a patchwork of electrons that would make a purist cry and a pragmatist applaud. I gave a short statement to a camera that wanted nouns and got verbs. We followed the plan. We prioritize people. We'll audit systems and publish fixes. No green, no go. The caption writers did their thing. I didn't read the comments. The CEO wanted to take a victory lap. I said he could walk a circle in his office and call it cardio. We don't celebrate rescues, I said. We log them. At 4:02 a.m., when the room smelled like the inside of eyelids, the general counsel slid a folder toward me the way people push chips into a pot. While we have you, he began. No, I said, because lawyers need boundaries like toddlers do. Schedule it. We're not doing strategy at dawn in a room that still has adrenaline on the floor. He nodded in a way that said he would do it anyway somewhere else. People like pain if it looks like paperwork. I walked out into air that had remembered it was October and stood on the sidewalk, letting the city talk to me in radiator clanks and distant sirens. She followed, because that's what you do when you haven't decided whether to apologize or double down. You were, she started, and stopped. There are words people avoid because they cost them status to say out loud. Useful, I said. Competent? The opposite of a leech? She flinched. I didn't call you that because of who you were. I called you that because of how I felt. That's almost worse, I said, and not unkindly. We stood like two people waiting for separate cabs. She stared at my hands. They used to feel small, she said, then winced at how that sounded. They don't now. They got bigger, I said. Or I did. Or you learned how to measure. I chose a life that made sense on paper, she said. It still does. Paper burns, I said. Valves turn. We didn't hug. That would have been an insult to the night. We didn't fight. That would have been a gift to the past. We nodded like neighbors. Then she said the thing she had to. He's going to hate that you ran the room. He can join the line, I said. We're not friends. We saved a kid. She looked relieved and something like afraid. You're going to be around now, aren't you? I'm around for work, I said. And for breakfast. Breakfast? Murray's, I said. French toast. Tell him Drew sent you. She didn't laugh, not fully. She walked back inside the bank like walking into a mirror, and I walked to the diner like walking into a memory, and the coffee tasted like relief. The next day, the board asked for a debrief, which is corporate for how did we almost become a headline. I wore the good shirt, the one that fits because I bought it after my ribs stopped feeling like a fence around a wound. And I printed my manuals because paper still calms me if you let it. The boardroom was everything men mean when they say timeless. which usually means wood and a clock that never gets asked how it feels. The CEO introduced me through gritted gratitude. "This is Drew," he said, as if the name were a brand he couldn't monetize. "We're going to talk through verbs," I said. "Not reputation, not narrative. Valves, receipts, what worked, what didn't. Then you're going to decide what to pay for, because that's what boards do." A woman with hair like a silver decision asked me why the elevator story was trending online. "Because the internet likes a child saved more than a slogan," I said. "Use that. Change policy, not avatars." A man who looked like the cover of an annual report asked, "How do we avoid this PR mess next time?" "By avoiding the emergency," I said, "or by surviving it with dignity. PR doesn't lift gates. Maintenance does." It was then that I did the thing that terrified her. I slid a single-page letter across the table, printed on my letterhead, which is just my name, an email, and the words receipts and valves. It was an acquisition term sheet. Not for the bank, not for the CEO's seat. For a crisis firm I'd built quietly in the 5 years since I left a life that had forgotten how to talk to me. We trained doormen to be incident commanders before someone official arrived. We wrote manuals that could be read at 3 a.m. without feeling like a dare. We were being acquired by a larger outfit, global, boring, trustworthy. And the bank would be one of our clients under a multi-year contract that made sense in any lighting. Her eyes scanned the line that named the acquirer. It was the bank's competitor's competitor. The one they mocked with the confidence of men who assume oceans never cross. "This isn't a pitch," I said. "The papers are signed. Compliance cleared it. You'll see the announcement this afternoon. I'm here because you need to know that from now on, if your building goes black, you call us. And if you want to talk about me, you don't. You talk about valves." She looked at me like someone had told her the future and it had a different skyline. The CEO looked at his lawyer like money could change facts. The board chair leaned forward and asked the only question that mattered. "What's the price?" I told them. It wasn't a number that buys islands. It was a number that buys time. The general counsel asked if there were any reputational risks. I said the only reputational risk was pretending you're safe because your last headline was kind. The CEO wanted to argue strategy. I wanted breakfast. We signed the engagement that afternoon because fear is a better closer than charm. Their comms team layered my verbs into their nouns and called it culture. I called it Tuesday. A reporter asked if I was the ex-husband. I said I was a person with a policy. He pivoted to the policy because words are cheap and procedures are expensive, and editors like expensive. If this were a movie, the music would swell, and I would stride out under a sky that meant it. Real life is smaller and more honest. Murray slid a plate across the counter with extra butter and said, "Heard you fixed a bank." I said, "We kept a kid from crying too long." He said, "Same thing," and refilled my mug until the world became solvable again. People started emailing at stranger hours, which is to say they started trusting the night. A hospital wanted our manual for their backups. A school district wanted a way to move buses without panic. A woman in Omaha wrote, "Do you do corn silos?" We did not. We Googled. We made calls. We wrote a draft that didn't get anyone hurt. We made less money than the internet thinks and more purpose than my calendar could hold. She texted once to ask if I would talk to the foundation where she now worked about emergency protocols for their gala. I said yes and added a line. "No nouns." She replied with a thumbs up that read like an apology if you squinted. The gala was in a hall built when people still believed marble could fix behavior. I ran a tabletop exercise. The donor passes out, the lights flicker, the doors get stubborn, the PR person wants to tweet. Who does what? Her team moved with a grace I recognized from years ago when she was good at parties because she was good at people. Now she was good at panic, too. I watched her call for the defibrillator and the water to the kitchen and the server to clear a path, and I thought, maybe the story had more than one hero, just not the one she'd picked last time. Later, out by the loading dock where air tastes like the truth, she said, I wasn't terrified because you were bigger, Drew. I was terrified because you didn't need me to be small, so you could be big. I spent a long time being small, I said. I learned to be measured instead. And him? He likes nouns, I said. He'll be fine until verbs show up again. She laughed a little, which is only a crime if you prosecute joy. At some point, an article came out with a headline like, "The Manual Guy Who Saved a Bank." It made my skin itch the way praise does when you know where the seams are. The comments had opinions about marriage that made me grateful for moderation. I stopped reading them because comments are not receipts. One night, months later, I found myself in that first bank's lobby again, not for a crisis, for a meeting in a carpeted room about budgets and drills. The security guard buzzed me in. My cousin says you're the dude who knows where the shutoff valve is, he said, in a tone that could have been mockery but wasn't. I read manuals, I said. I help people not die. The rest is PR. He nodded like a man who has held a stranger's fear and handed it back gently. Respect. There are 1,000 versions of terrified, I've learned. The one that matters is the face someone makes when they realize the story they told to survive is older than the life they're in. She had that face the morning the acquisition announcement hit, and commenters wrote the word vindication like it was confetti. She did not text me congratulations. She sent a photo of a note card she kept in her wallet. No green, no go. It had sweat marks. It had life, I wrote back. Manual or mirror today? She wrote, manual. Then, after a pause, mirror later. I saved that thread because sometimes receipts are not about money. If you're waiting for the scene where I sit at the head of a table and the banker has to look up at me and I deliver a monologue about leeches and light, this isn't that story. Revenge is a child's candy. Reflection is a grown person's meal. I didn't need him to shrink. I needed to know I could stand in a room built to make people feel small and not become furniture. The only time I told the leech story on stage, a guy in the back yelled, "Name names." And I said, "Names don't open doors." The room laughed the way rooms laugh when they recognize their own worst habits. After, a nurse came up to me and said, I kept a kid alive last week with a guideline that wasn't sexy and no one clapped. So I clapped for myself. Is that weird? I said, it's a manual. Clap twice. We clapped together in the alley behind the club. New York applauded with a horn. I still make breakfast. You can win a contract and still scramble eggs because eggs don't care about your title. Some mornings, when the light comes in at a slant that makes the dust look like a parade. I pour coffee and whisper to the ceiling, was I a leech? The ceiling still doesn't answer. The phone does, sometimes at bad hours, saying, we're dark, or we're stuck, or we need a voice. I go, that's the whole job. The other day, Murray retired. He handed me a spatula like it was a baton. For when the world needs flipping, he said. I said, you want a manual? He said, nah, I got you. Maybe that's the thing I did that terrified her. Not the acquisition, not the boardroom, not the contracts with numbers that made my teenage self fist pump inside my ribcage. Maybe it was becoming a person who could be trusted by night and by morning equally. Maybe the scariest thing we can do to someone who called us small is become measured where they can see it without anyone getting hurt. Or maybe it's simpler. Maybe that night, when the room looked to a man without cufflinks, and the elevator listened, and the kid breathed, and the CEO sat because Emmanuel outranked a title, she saw a future that didn't include her saving me from myself. She was free from that job, and that's freedom. But freedom makes a sound when it leaves. It sounds a little like terror if you're not ready. If you want a rule I trust, it's this. Choose verbs over nouns. Choose receipts over rumors. Choose the person who knows where the shutoff valve lives, even if that person is you. Manual or mirror, your week will tell you which. I promised myself that if the day ever came when I had to walk back into a room that used to feel like a dare, I'd do it without a speech and with a plan. The day came. A regulator convened a summit, which is like a debrief except with more badges. Banks, hospitals, transit, power, everyone who had ever used the words "we'll monitor" to mean we're praying. We sat in a circle of chairs that made important people look like citizens. I wrote on a whiteboard 3 sentences I wished someone had written for me when I was 25 and swallowing pride with coffee. 1. No green, no go. 2. If you don't know the valve, you don't know the culture. 3. Don't teach courage with memos. A young man with a tie tight enough to qualify as a promise asked me, "What about optics?" "Optics are nouns," I said. "They'll follow your verbs." A woman in scrubs said, "We clap for the wrong things." She wasn't wrong. We clap for headlines. We should clap for the person who checked the battery in the flashlight before the storm hit. After the summit, she came up to me. No makeup you could see, no armor you can buy. "I keep thinking about that word," she said. "Leech." She looked like someone examining a broken fossil. I said it to make the world simpler. "The world never was," I said. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. "I'm asking what to do with it." "Carry it until it gets heavy enough to set down," I said. "Then set it down where it can't roll back onto anyone else." She nodded. "Manual," she said to herself, like a prayer. "If you need an ending, here's the closest I have. A Sunday morning. My apartment smelling like the kind of coffee you can drink without lying to yourself. Sunlight outlining the mug that says, 'Quiet wins.' My inbox showing a new client who learned the hard way last night that power isn't the same as electricity. I put on a jacket that fits because I paid attention, not because I paid a tailor. I checked the batteries in the flashlight by habit. I text Murray a photo of French toast, and he sends back a heart nobody would believe he knows how to use. On my way out the door, I touch the valve in the utility closet like a person says hello to a friend. I lock up. The hallway smells like someone's life changing in a good way. On the street, a bus moans its way toward a corner nobody loves. A man argues with a parking sign about what the word "accept" means. A kid leaps from a stoop like the cement is hot lava and lands laughing. The city is still a manual we pretend is a poem. It forgives us for reading it wrong. I take a deep breath and start walking east. The sky is the color of a brand you can trust. The day feels like a system coming back from dark. I don't think about her much anymore. Some days I do. On those days I remember this. Not every fear you put into the world is about who you hurt. Sometimes it's about who you startled awake. 5 years after being called a leech, I became the person with the one sentence that quiets a room and makes a plan real. That's all. That's enough. You can do it too. Start with one verb. Learn one valve. Carry one receipt. Manual or mirror. Pick one in the comments. No names. Just verbs.